I have to pretend like, oh God, oh crazy that we're in front of this. I'm a narcissist. There's a fruit basket in my trailer.
It's about being authentic.
Why do some celebrities always sound like they're reading from the same script? Megan Markle and Rachel Zegler might come from different backgrounds, but their public personas? Almost identical. From polished buzzwords to rehearsed sound bites, both have mastered the art of modern celebrity branding. But when Megan jumped in to defend Rachel amid growing backlash, it backfired. Instead of damage control, it only made things worse. Megan's already under fire with fresh accusations of narcissism, and her involvement just poured gasoline on the flames. As for Zegler, with her Snow White remake already drowning in controversy, Megan's support may have done more harm than good. So, is this just another Hollywood PR disaster? Or are we looking at a deeper issue within the industry? Stick around, because what you're about to hear might just change the way you see celebrity culture.
Now, Douglas, you've written about the Snow White controversy this week, and Disney have lost a fortune by backing stupidly woke productions, but they're doing it again. What's the definition of madness again? And with Snow White, the lead actress has been described as a walking PR disaster.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. It's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess.
Douglas, I'm not sure she understands the depths of the themes behind fairy tales, but she seems to have utter contempt for the Snow White story.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it seems that the PR strategy of Disney is to ruin all classic movies and all classic cartoons, and claim they're all dated, whilst offering us these horribly dated cliches. Basically, the actress in question is just peeing all over the 1937 cartoon version that's so loved by people, and saying things like, she said in an interview, don't expect her to wait for the prince, there may not even be a prince. He's in the recording, but he may be edited out, and the reason, she said, is that the real story of Snow White apparently is that Snow White can become the leader she's meant to be. And apart from the fact, by the way, interestingly enough, Rita, that sounds like a script written by Megan Markle, who of course actually did wait for the prince, or indeed rushed at a prince and grabbed him for her own use. But that aside, what's clearly happening with this is this terrible attempt to sort of update everything, and what they don't realize is that the updating they're doing already sounds much more dated. You know, the 1937 cartoon of Snow White will be ageless. This nonsense already sounds aged to me, at any rate, and I can't wait for this to be yet another Disney box office bomb.
Yes, social media is a environment that I think has a lot of that. You know, it's really interesting as I can reflect on it. I keep my distance from it right now. The bulk of the bullying and abuse in social media and online, and you just think about that, and you to really wrap your head around why people would be so hateful. It's not catty, it's cruel. Why you would do that.
I feel like if Megan Markle had kept acting and had actually scored a big franchise, she would have become Rachel Zegler.
We want privacy! We want privacy!
When Megan Markle stepped in to defend Rachel Zegler, it was supposed to be an empowering moment. One woman standing up for another against public criticism. But instead of shifting the narrative in Zegler's favor, Megan's involvement only made things worse. Not only did it drag Snow White into even deeper controversy, but it also reignited backlash against Megan herself. Now, Disney is left scrambling to contain what has become a full-blown PR disaster. At first glance, Megan Markle and Rachel Zegler might not seem to have much in common. One is a former actress who married into British royalty, while the other is a rising star in Hollywood. But look a little closer, and you'll see a striking similarity. Both women stepped into the role of a princess, only to reject the traditional narrative that came with it. Megan's story is well known. She entered the British royal family as an outsider, claimed to struggle under its restrictions, and ultimately broke away with Prince Harry. She later painted the monarchy as outdated and oppressive, positioning herself as a modern, independent, woman who refused to conform. Rachel Zegler, meanwhile, took a similar approach with Snow White. In interviews, she made it clear she had no interest in playing the classic Disney princess. She dismissed the 1937 animated film as outdated, criticized Snow White's love story, and openly mocked the idea of being saved by a prince. Instead, this Snow White would be a leader, a version that fit Hollywood's modern messaging. So, when Megan defended Rachel, she likely saw herself in her, a woman rewriting the rules, challenging tradition, and facing backlash for it. But here's the problem. Neither of them seem to realize that their rejection. And that's where the real controversy begins. Megan and Rachel thought they were rewriting the rules, but the public saw it differently. What they framed as empowerment came off as arrogant and dismissive of the very stories that made them beloved in the first place. Instead of rallying sympathy around Rachel, Megan's involvement only made things worse. To many, this was yet another example of Megan inserting herself into controversy and making it all about her. And with the public already turning against her, especially after South Park brutally mocked her for demanding privacy while constantly seeking the spotlight, her defense of Zegler only reminded people why they had grown tired of her in the first place. For Zegler, Megan's support wasn't a lifeline. It was an anchor, dragging her even deeper into the backlash. Instead of letting the controversy fade, it reignited with even more intensity. Now, Rachel wasn't just an actress who misspoke. She was being compared to Megan, someone who wanted the prestige of playing a princess without respecting the legacy that came with it. And for Disney, this was an absolute nightmare. The Snow White remake was already on thin ice. Fans were turned off by Rachel's comments, and leaks from the set only made things worse. The decision to replace the Seven, dwarfs with a diverse group of CGI-enhanced magical creatures, mocked. A Snow White movie where the prince might not even exist? Fans weren't having it. And now, with Megan Markle stepping in, Snow White wasn't just another bad remake. It was being lumped into the same polarizing category as Megan herself. And that was the last thing Disney needed. Disney was already struggling to regain audience trust after a string of box office flops, The Marvels, Indiana Jones, and The Dial of Destiny. And Snow White was supposed to be a guaranteed win, a remake of one of their most iconic films. But Megan Markle's involvement? It only reminded people of everything they disliked about modern Hollywood. The rewriting of beloved stories to push a new agenda, the condescending attitude toward fans, and the rejection of classic characters in favor of modern updates that no one asked for. Behind the scenes, Disney executives were reportedly furious. The film was already drowning in bad press, and now, instead of course correcting, it had been sucked into an even bigger controversy. Megan Markle hadn't helped Rachel Zegler. She made her even more toxic. And with Snow White already shaping up to be a financial disaster, the last thing Disney needed was for audiences to associate it with the most controversial woman in modern pop culture. The end of the day, Megan's defense of Rachel Zegler didn't help anyone. It didn't make Rachel look better. If anything, it cemented her reputation as someone pushing a Snow White remake that audiences never wanted. It didn't boost Megan's image. If anything, it reminded people why she's such a polarizing figure. And for Disney, what was already a PR nightmare had now exploded into a full-blown crisis. With the film's release looming, Disney is now scrambling to salvage Snow White before it becomes another massive box office bomb. But with Megan Markle's name now tangled in the controversy, the damage may already be done. Instead of a fresh take on a beloved fairy tale, Snow White is now just another example of Hollywood rewriting the past, whether audiences like it or not.